UK true crime stories. The village was suffocating. Not from a killer in the shadows, but from something far more insidious, flowing unseen beneath their very feet. And for one family, it meant their dream of home was dead before it even began. Welcome to UK True Crime Stories, Episode 5. I'm Sophie, and today we have 3 cases that will stay with you. Stay with us to the end, we'll come back to that opening story, and trust me, the truth is even stranger than it sounds. Our first case takes us to a quiet corner of England, where a seemingly invisible threat began to spread with terrifying speed. It started, as these things often do, with a single, isolated incident. A young woman, we'll call her Chloe, in her early 20s, vibrant and full of life, suddenly fell ill. It was rapid, aggressive. Within hours, she was fighting for her life in intensive care. Doctors initially suspected a severe viral infection, but then the telltale signs began to emerge: a rash, a stiffness in her neck. Meningitis. Her family, devastated, clung to hope. But just as they were grappling with Chloe's sudden decline, reports began to trickle in from other parts of the region. A man in a neighboring town, Michael, a father of 2, presented with similar symptoms. Then a teenager, Liam, from a different community altogether. The cases were geographically disparate, yet eerily similar in their onset and severity. Panic, a quiet, creeping kind, began to settle over the local health authorities. One case of meningitis is serious. A cluster is a red flag. But this wasn't just a cluster. This was an outbreak. An unprecedented wave that seemed to defy all normal patterns. In a matter of weeks, 34 people were affected. 34 lives suddenly plunged into a terrifying battle against an unseen enemy. And for 2 of them, including Chloe, that battle was lost.
Sophie, when we hear about outbreaks like this, especially something as serious as meningitis, the first question everyone asks is, what caused it? How did it spread so fast, and across such a wide area?
Precisely, Dan. And that's where the investigation became a frantic race against time. Public Health England, working with local NHS trusts, mobilized an enormous effort. They were trying to be detectives, but instead of fingerprints, they were looking for microscopic clues. Every contact, every shared space, every possible link was scrutinized. They interviewed families, friends, colleagues. They mapped movements, checked travel histories, looked at schools, workplaces, social gatherings. Was it a contaminated batch of food? A shared event? A new, highly transmissible strain?
And what did they find? Because unprecedented suggests they weren't dealing with something they'd seen before.
It was baffling. The usual culprits: crowded student accommodation, close-knit communities where infection can jump easily, weren't fitting the pattern. These were seemingly unconnected individuals, leading different lives, in different places. The speed of transmission was alarming, but the lack of a clear, common source was even more so. Imagine the fear in those communities, Dan. Every cough, every headache, suddenly became a source of terror. Parents checking their children constantly, people avoiding public spaces. The unknown was truly terrifying. Investigators had 5 crucial questions they needed to answer. What was the exact strain of bacteria? How was it being transmitted? Where was the original source? Why was it spreading so rapidly and widely? And most critically, how could they stop it? They implemented widespread vaccination campaigns in affected areas, a desperate measure to try and contain the invisible threat. But even as the number of new cases eventually began to slow, those 5 questions, they lingered. The source remained elusive. The mechanism of its rapid, widespread transmission, never fully understood. Leaving behind not just immense grief, but a chilling sense of unease. A reminder that sometimes, the most dangerous threats are the ones you can't see and can't explain.
Stories like this one don't get told unless people are listening. If you're new here, hit subscribe. We cover real UK cases every single day, and you don't want to miss what's coming. Sophie, the next case we're looking at took investigators years to even begin to understand. But it wasn't a criminal investigation in the traditional sense. This was a battle for justice of a different kind, one fought in boardrooms and courtrooms, but with very real human consequences. Our focus today is on Brewdog, a company that rose to prominence as a rebellious, independent craft beer giant. They built an empire on challenging the status quo, on a punk rock ethos that resonated with millions. They had a loyal following and, crucially, a dedicated workforce who bought into that vision. Employees who worked tirelessly, often for less pay than industry standard, because they believed in the dream. They were part of something, they thought, bigger than just a job. But then, in 2023, the landscape shifted dramatically. Brewdog, facing significant financial challenges, went into administration. A US firm, Tilray, stepped in, buying the brewery and 11 of its bars for a reported £33 million. On the surface, it seemed like a lifeline, a new chapter. But for hundreds of employees, it quickly turned into a nightmare.
It was a brutal shock, Dan. Imagine dedicating years of your life, pouring your energy and loyalty into a company you truly believed in, only to be told, essentially, that your service meant nothing. That's what many workers felt when the accusations of a fire and rehire approach began to surface.
That's right. The accusation was that Tilray, the new owners, terminated the contracts of existing staff and then offered them new ones, often on significantly worse terms. Lower pay, fewer benefits, less favorable working conditions. For many, it felt like a betrayal. A slap in the face after years of hard work and commitment. We heard from workers like Sarah, who had been with the company for almost a decade. She spoke of the initial excitement of being part of Brewdog's growth, the camaraderie, the feeling of shared purpose. Then, the crushing blow of being told her old contract was gone. And the impossible choice, accept a new deal that barely covered her bills, or walk away from a job she loved, a job she'd built her life around.
It's a stark reminder, Dan, that while we often focus on physical crimes, the impact of corporate decisions can be just as devastating, stripping people of their security, their dignity, and their future. For many, it wasn't just about the money, it was about the principle. The feeling that their loyalty had been exploited, that the punk ethos had been replaced by a cold, corporate bottom line.
The legal battles were complex. Unions became involved, representing the aggrieved workers. They argued that this fire and rehire strategy was not only morally reprehensible but potentially unlawful, a tactic to shed long-term obligations and cut costs at the expense of loyal employees. The company, of course, maintained that these were necessary business decisions to ensure the long-term viability of the brand. But for the men and women who had built Brewdog, the fight was personal. It was about standing up for fair treatment, for the value of their labor, and for the promise that had been implicitly made to them when they joined the company. It became a powerful symbol of the wider struggles many workers face in an increasingly precarious job market. A fight for justice, not against a single perpetrator, but against a system that can, at times, feel equally ruthless.
I never get used to these. If you've been sharing these episodes with friends, thank you. It genuinely helps more people discover the channel. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. Dan, our final story today brings us full circle to the chilling cold open. A story of a community held captive, not by a person, but by something far more fundamental.
It's a stark reminder, Sophie, that not all crimes are committed by individuals. Sometimes, the systemic failures, the unseen problems, can inflict just as much damage on lives and dreams.
Exactly. We opened with the image of a village suffocating, a dream of home shattered. That dream belonged to a young woman named Eleanor. She'd spent her childhood summers on the plot of land her grandparents owned in their ancestral village in Northern Ireland. It was picturesque, idyllic, a place she always imagined raising her own family. Years of planning, saving, and dreaming culminated in the day she finally secured permission to build her home there. It was her future, her legacy.
A moment of triumph turned into tragedy.
Absolutely. Because just as she was ready to break ground, the devastating truth emerged. Eleanor, along with countless others in her village, was told that no new connections could be made to the public water system. Not for her new home, not for anyone. The existing water infrastructure in that part of Northern Ireland was, quite simply, at breaking point. It couldn't handle any more demand.
So, her dream of building a home was dead because the pipes beneath the ground couldn't cope. It sounds almost unbelievable.
It is, Dan. And it wasn't just Eleanor. It was an entire community stalled. Businesses that wanted to expand, unable to get the water they needed. Young couples who wanted to move back to their family homes, trapped in limbo. Elderly residents needing adaptations to their properties, facing unforeseen roadblocks. The village, once vibrant, was slowly being choked. Development ceased. Growth was impossible. People were being forced to leave, or simply couldn't return.
So, the invisible killer wasn't an illness, but a broken system.
A system that had been neglected for decades. The infrastructure, built generations ago, was simply not fit for purpose in the 21st century. It was leaking, inefficient, and utterly overwhelmed. And the impact was profound. It wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a socio-economic catastrophe for these small, rural communities. It was preventing new families from moving in, denying opportunities, and slowly, insidiously, draining the life out of these places.
It's a silent crisis, isn't it? One that doesn't make headlines with dramatic arrests, but impacts lives just as deeply. The frustration must have been immense.
Beyond immense. Imagine wanting to contribute to your community, wanting to build a life, and being told no, because the very basic amenity of water isn't available. Locals like Eleanor campaigned tirelessly, raising awareness, demanding action from authorities. They felt forgotten, abandoned. Their village was literally drying up, metaphorically speaking, because the pipes couldn't carry the load.
And the solution? Is there one in sight?
The solutions are complex, long-term, and incredibly expensive. It requires massive investment, years of planning and construction. Meanwhile, for people like Eleanor, their dreams remain on hold. That plot of land, once a symbol of hope, now sits empty, a stark monument to a dream deferred, a community slowly suffocating, all because of something as fundamental, and as unseen, as the water flowing or not flowing beneath their feet. It's a true crime against a community, Dan, even if there's no single perpetrator to arrest.
That's UK True Crime Stories for today, episode 5. These stories are inspired by real documented cases. If today's episode moved you, share it with someone who'd appreciate it. It really does make a difference. If you have information about any unsolved case, please contact Crime Stoppers on 0800 555 111, anonymously, anytime. Subscribe for more true crime every day, and if you're interested in real UK money stories, debt, savings, financial freedom, check out our sister channel UK Stories.